Hello and good evening or good morning, whichever it is for you. In this video, we're going to remain in the world of Tanks, but we're going to be exploring something just a little bit different. I have managed to somehow, I'm not going to tell you exactly how I did it, but I am able to have multiple clients open at the same time. So I'm going to be using this feature for the benefit of us all today and taking the time to explore various maps of World of Tanks in detail that we would not be able to otherwise. The reason I have to do it this way is simply because I don't have any friends that I can do this with in the game. So we're going to be taking a nice, calm drive through various, typically city maps we're going to be going through. This map is one of the first maps many people will play on. It's called Himmelsdorf and is modeled after, I believe, a German city. I don't know exactly which one, but I don't think it's a real one. I could be mistaken, however, I'm not too familiar with a lot of the history of these locations. But as you can see, we're just going to be taking the time to kind of just look at various little things that now remain empty and unused, thanks to the way that we've decided to go about viewing them today. In addition to being one of the first maps that many people will play on, I am playing in one of the first tanks many people will play in, the Renault FT of World War I vintage. You can see here many ruined homes from presumably bombing raids or something similar. We're coming up on the train tracks here in the train station, as well as a defunct trolley line here. You can imagine a lot of people moving in and out of all these various warehouses and ticketing offices and so on. The happy residents, now gone through some inexplicable event, presumably war. I don't know how to pronounce that. But here you can see trolley number 2175 parked, unused, on the tracks. You can even see the operator controls. It's a very detailed model for something that would be presumably run over fairly quickly in a battle. Thanks to the fact that there is no pressure of any enemy tanks coming after us, as that account is indeed just me on a separate client, we can take the time to explore one-way streets, look at these phone booths, and look at fairly odd and unused portions of the map in normal combat. Like in all my years of playing World of Tanks, I don't think I've seen anybody utilize this odd little corner street by this warehouse even once, to be honest with you. Let's find a way into the rail lines and then over to the train depot. Here we are. Some sort of tower here. I'm not too sure what would be stored inside of it. Presumably water for the steam engines. You can see here a place for people to sit and wait for their train to arrive, as well as some beautiful vintage citrons. You can see here a small warehouse where goods would be loaded onto the train as it makes its stops here in the city of Himmelsdorf. Looks like a small hand-operated winch or crane for cargo. Enough of that, let's take a look at some of these trucks here, still loaded down with goods. This tank really is pretty tiny. As you can see, this might be a scaling issue. Actually, this might be an error. The FT is a small tank, but it's definitely about the same size as a regular door. And you can see here, compared to the car, the FT is in proper scale. Ah, I get it. This thing was on a different map. I believe it's on Karelia, but it's scaled up here in Himmelsdorf. Here we have a small, I assume, office building. A cargo office. Part warehouse, part cargo office. There's nobody inside to load or unload goods or take stock currently. It's just us looking around in this dead city. Power box. There we go. The Renault FT is equipped with a small 37mm cannon, low velocity, with minimal penetration and damage. You can see here some rolling stock still laid out on the track. This is something I never noticed. The city of Himmelsdorf is situated on a harbor, and you can see a German battle cruiser sunk in the harbor. That must have been something that was added in the graphical update of the game that I am personally not so fond of. You can see here a small switching station for the tracks. Operator long gone, although there is a nice pile of sleepers. And here we have another cargo office of some description. Another cargo station complete with crane. Appears to be some signals for the train depot. And you can see the castle of Himmelsdorf off in the distance there. We will be making our way over there shortly. Or as shortly as one could expect given the tank at hand. Here's a watering station for the engines here. For those of you who don't know, steam locomotives require both fuel and water to remain operational. Beautiful architecture here for the train depot. And it is indeed a depot as opposed to a station, I believe, as there is no other entrances for pedestrians besides these three here, and is mainly just for trains here. There's no crossover for people to switch from track to track either, which makes me believe this might be a train depot as opposed to a train station. Rather unfortunate, the large glass roof has been demolished by war. Let's take a little jaunt out to a courtyard here. Very large roundabout. complete with a fountain, and presumably apartments and civic centers off to the side. This might be a train station, come to think of it, as this would be indeed a grand sight for people disembarking from their journey. Down here is the typical tank destroyer alley, where a lot of TDs come to sit and whittle away the game. There is my alt account over there. Good old Batman from Turkey. You can see here some shops on the first floor, or residences. It's kind of hard to tell, but most are boarded up, unfortunately. The people long gone, disappeared. You can see the remains of a re-siding job here, the scaffolding. This is typically where artillery would sit during the game, well protected from enemy attack. You can see here the level of destruction brought about by whatever, presumably the Second World War is when this game is set in a lot of respects. Look at this. Presumably a governmental center of some description, some public building, a seat of local power. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to climb the steps and enter the building, as there is the map border in the way. But before we cut back through the vast majority of the map, let's take a detour and visit Castle Himmelsdorf, shall we? Again, boarded up restaurants or cafes or what have you. You can see here, presumably somebody's favorite chair, where they can watch the street and the world kind of roll by. Unfortunately, whoever once occupied that chair is now long gone. No sign of them anywhere. Let's try and take a peek into one of these shops. Not really much to be seen beyond that desk. You can see here Himmelsdorf is a very well thought out city with many public spaces and residential areas and small corner cafes and just places for people to be people. The old walls of Castle Himmelsdorf you can see down there. Unfortunate what happened to that balcony, huh? If you're looking, you can tell all the streets are cobbled, by the way. Not really a big deal for a tank like this, but if you were in a road-going car, it might be a bit of a trial on your suspension. You can see here these very beautiful, probably once gas street lamps, now electric. Let me just alter the destruction physics. Those need to be turned back on, I think. So in the next battle, we will have the enhanced destruction physics. This is a very beautiful space for people to come and gather on the hill leading to Castle Himmelsdorf. Beautiful apartments. Looks like the trolley service doesn't run all the way to Castle Himmelsdorf. You would have to drive or bike or walk to visit the beauty and splendor of such an ancient and historical site. This might take a little while, so let's try and enjoy some of the view while we drive up. For those of you familiar with the game, you might have noticed that I've doubled the battle timer from 15 minutes to 30. That's just so we get some time to explore every little bit of the map that we can. Here we are. We've arrived at Castle Himmelsdorf, an ancient and beautiful structure. Now a place designed for people to come and gather and marvel at its once great splendor. We can take a nice little peek into the courtyard, or the inner courtyard of Castle Himmelsdorf. But the real reason we've made our way up all the way to the top of the hill is to take in the full view of the map from this vantage point. There's not much else to be seen at the top of this hill beyond this. Here we can see the beauty of Himmelsdorf in its entirety. I'll be keeping the heads-up display off for the remainder of the video. You can see the central field, the green base, and off over here, the red base. The entire playable area is within view at any given moment from this vantage point. And one can imagine it back in its heyday, a beacon of civilized society. Let's make our way down to the other base there. You can get a good view of that ruined battle cruiser over there. Even all the way up here, we still get little glimpses of humanity. Erroneous barrels. A beautiful castle now converted into a manor. Let's head on down to the church, shall we? This should be much quicker than going up. Can still get some wonderful views on the way down. Interesting place to park the car. I wonder exactly what happened here. Road's completely blocked off. As you can see, this is the closest the trolley will get to Castle Himmelsdorf. Some burnt trees, and a fairly interesting part of the map coming up. A small courtyard that's completely inaccessible to players, but is nevertheless still modeled in-game, with a tree in its very center. Let's take a moment to take a look at that, shall we? Yep, right there in that block of buildings is an interior courtyard that we simply cannot make our way into. Completely filled with greenery for the people living in these blocks to enjoy. Apotheke. Looks like they sell beer. Or did sell beer. Let's make our way down this little side street here. Past small closed down shops and piles of rubble and long forgotten cars. Very nice little hotel. And a very cute little pocket park. Quite adorable, I'd say. A very pleasant city to visit. The bridge is unfortunately blocked off. No getting out that way. In fact, there's no getting out of Himmelsdorf anyway. I wonder who used to live here. What do they do? Here we can see an unfortunately ruined church, dilapidated from constant shelling. This is where the green team spawns. Let's see if we can take a little peek on the inside. Well, we get a little bit of a glimpse, but unfortunately nothing is rendered on the interior of the church. We can see here very beautiful mosaic patterns leading up to the church. And let's make our way to the central courtyard. Careful not to run into too many objects. People may come back to this place in due time, and I don't want to ruin everything for them. Passing by very infrequently used parts of the map, I'd say. Some side streets and alleys specifically for people in mind. Another little park, a little area of greenery. Look at this. Cool looking door. Let's just make our way into the field in the center of Himmelsdorf. The largest public space in the city, I'd say. Beautiful fountain here. And a wonderful, beautiful, and another beautiful central fountain here, complete with decorations of, looks like lions. We also have spools of wire, some flak guns, as this wide open space made a great area for anti-aircraft platforms. Bit of a shame what happened, huh? And over here we got a statue of somebody very important, no doubt, that I probably have no clue the identity of. Yeah, no idea. But suitably Germanic armor from the mid to late Middle Ages. Oh, yeah, he's destructible, alright. The only indestructible statue, from what I remember, is one of Lenin. This is indeed a Russian game, after all. This is a very beautiful central square, though. Incredible amount of fountains. Beautiful, wide open civic area. Before we move on to a different map, let's take another quick look down toward the governmental building, since I forgot to mention something. See what's inside this ruined building. Nothing. Makes you wonder where all these people went. You know, if they're doing okay or whatever happened to them. Looks like another very large public building, maybe a library. Well, I'd say that's about it for this map. Let's move on to another favorite of mine after this. And here we are on Prokhorovka, one of the largest and most expansive maps in the game. Definitely one of the most open and dynamic map in the game. It is based on a real-life conflict in Operation Barbarossa that I do not know anything about. But I do know this map features many small little villages and homes that we're going to take a little wander toward and through. There are quite a lot of sunflowers in this map, as well as small village farmhouses that display how people in the Soviet Union used to live at one point or another. You can see here a small garden patch, presumably owned and operated by this small farmer with his chicken coop. Let's make sure not to destroy too much coming in and out of here. And one could imagine this small, low building over here to be maybe his neighbors, as they have a lot of laundry out. They at least have electricity. I wonder what this is here. Looks like a small well, in addition to a larger one in this guy's property that you better believe I'm going to go and check out. Looks like he accidentally left a truck parked in the main entrance, so we'll have to go through this small little orchard and try not to make our own by accident. Here you can see a lot of crockery or pottery lined up on top of this wicker fence. Presumably it's laid out to dry before being fired in a kiln. A less glamorous part of country life right there. It looks like this man is a beekeeper as well. A barn. So this is all one property, presumably owned by this small farmer over there. Beautiful tree. A gate of some description. I'm just gonna go through it. They're not gonna be here for a while, so no harm, no foul, you know? Not like there's any animals to be let loose anyhow. You can see 2 Soviet fighters flying overhead. 3. This is one of Wargaming's dynamic maps, where there can be dynamic events that burn down a significant chunk of forest to liven up some play. We're making our way toward the prominent set of train tracks on Prokhorovka here that many people play around. Not here per se on the train tracks, further up, but the train tracks are a very prominent landmark on Prokhorovka, as well as this church, believe it or not. Despite the Soviet Union's best efforts, Orthodox Christianity remained a very large part of regular people's lives. Coming up on our left here, you can see the burnt out husk of a Panzer IV in the middle of somebody's field. Looks like they were preparing the field. In some way, they were getting hay out of it. Maybe we can make a detour back to this man's barn at some point. Or we could go there now, actually, take a little visit, and try not to knock down more fence than has already been knocked over. It's always a little weird seeing places like this with no people at all. Here we can see the small farmer's house, still with a thatched roof. You can see small gardens and large tracts of fields, as well as some sunflowers that seem to be growing on their own accord. It's just a lot of abandoned farm equipment as well. It appears the Germans came in quick enough to where it wasn't feasible to pack up for the day. Let's try to make our way through the back portion of this village right now. Careful not to knock over too much. Let's get a nice little look at this village. It's a really quaint little town. I wish the old graphics were still in place, as it truly gave these landscapes a very liminal feeling to them. One interesting thing that we can do is knock over a portion of the house here, and you'll get a bit of an interior look to some of these places. As you can see there. There are quite a lot of sunflowers on this map. Let's make our way to the central location where a lot of heavy tanks tend to congregate during normal games of Prokhorovka. You can see a bunch of sleepers just lying on the ground here. In almost every game on Prokhorovka, this poor man's farmhouse gets completely demolished. I think that'll change today. Now let's make our way up to the hill. Very slowly, unfortunately. You can see the enemy base in the distance. Some bundles of wheat. As well as stocks of firewood for the wintertime. This must have been a fairly wealthy home, as glass is, or was, not exactly commonplace. Or at least good quality glass, anyhow. Well, it was commonplace, but it wasn't cheap, is what I'm trying to say. Considering there was a proposed window tax in Victorian Britain, one could imagine that windows were fairly valuable, or an indicator of wealth at the very least. Look at this humble little home here. I don't think I can make it inside this guy's property without destroying his fence. So his fence is gonna have to come down. This is indeed somebody's home too. Small little place. Most likely a sharecropper of some description. As you can see, there are many ways to get to the top of the hill. And we're going to take the scenic route so we can take a look at the low LOD houses up here. Which remind me of a point-and-click adventure game like Riven, the way they're rendered in. Something about them is just charming. I wonder if they're destructible. Nope. Oh, they are. That one has a chimney. Very cool. Now we are making our way to the highest point on Prokhorovka. We'll try and avoid... fuck it. We're just gonna plow through this fence. I'm not too sure what exactly this land is used for, but there is sadly a small cemetery over here. Let's try and get a scenic view of the entire map. Somewhere in the steppes of Russia. Here we are. Top of the world. Can you imagine living out here in the countryside, in this little village? Going about your daily life, doing your daily chores. Then all of a sudden a war breaks out and forces you from it. Can you imagine bearing witness? Can you imagine bearing witness to some of the most advanced pieces of technology day to day, that being railways, but still not having running water? We don't have much time left. There's fortunately not much else to see on this map. So let's go pay a visit to our compatriot over in the red base. If I die falling off this cliff, I'll move on to the next map, but we'll have to see what happens. Oh boy. There we are. Unfortunately, it looks like I'll be out of time regardless, so let's simply move on to the next map now. Well, here we are on our third and final map. Can you guess what it is? That's right. We are on Ensk, a Soviet city full of what I believe are apartment blocks built in the Stalinist days, as well as small village homes out in the field, and a very large rail yard central to the theme of Ensk. If anyone's heard the Ensk introductory music, it is punctuated by a train's whistle. Let's slowly make our way through various parts of the map and see what we can see. Like this, for example. A small stand of some description and some what look to be easels on the ground. Or maybe it was a balcony? I don't know. Kind of weird. Yet again, we can take small peeks into what were people's homes, presumably, and businesses. Despite all the hardship, this is still a very patriotic town. Flags are still hung from every window. Support for the Red Army everywhere. Look at all these tank traps. No, absolutely not. Can't get through them. I assume they're the same tank trap models that were on Komarin. Not Komarin, it's just called Swamp, I believe, at one point or another. But the tank traps were in a central location on the map, and only heavy tanks could break through them, which is a little bit strange because you could get that map with tier 2s and 3s and shit. It's pretty funny. I wonder what sort of places these used to be. Homes or businesses, or probably both. You can see the proper scale of the tank to the door, by the way. That model of the tower in Himmelsdorf was most definitely just a scaled up model from elsewhere in the game. We have a little vendor stand. And we can make our way into a little courtyard here. If we can slip by this ambulance. There we go. Parking wasn't really a big concern of Soviet city planning. Having public spaces within these connected apartment blocks was, however, a big prioritization, or a big priority for Soviet city planning. Gonna have the low-income housing in the middle here like this. Like they're in a fishbowl or something. a well or something. More like a little gazebo. And here you can see a big Soviet pastime. The parallel bars, or the gymnastic bars, or all that. Another shame. If anybody knows Russian in the comments, feel free to translate that. I do not know what it says. Let's try and get another bird's eye view of Anskir. It's a very compact city map. Oh, here's Lenin. I don't think this statue is destructible. Let's test it out. Nope. It's a little bit of Russian bias, since Sir Foch on the Paris map is indeed destructible. One thing I always admired about the Soviets is their use of artwork and mosaics and architecture. I find communist era art very interesting, and this is no different. As you can see here, it's a very detailed mosaic, and they've snuck the World of Tanks logo into it as well. This is most definitely the sort of mosaic you'd see in like Belarus or Kiev or Chernobyl or Pripyat for that matter. You can see quite a few different maps at the top. You can see Paris, the Eiffel Tower there. You can see, I believe, Glacier above that. And then, I believe the map's called Cliff with a lighthouse. And then next to that is Abbey. And then that would be Westfield with a mountain and you can see the giveaway there, the train track. And then below that, I can't really tell actually. I believe that would be Highway right there. Well, that's Himmelsdorf, that's not Glacier. Interesting. Here's good old Vladimir Lenin. Fairly imposing. Here you can see all sorts of ticketing stations and small warehouses for the transportation of cargo on the rails. All abandoned, people long gone. One interesting thing you can see about city planning in the older days is that a lot of industrial concerns had to be located upon major rail networks, simply because that was the main way cargo was transported. So a lot of large factories would have their own little rail depot where goods could be loaded and unloaded at the manufacturer's leisure. We probably aren't going to be going into the field. We'll stick to the city, I think. But first, let's go say hi to our Little buddy here. Here we find more apartment blocks, some completely bombed out, unfortunately, although they provide great loopholes for tank destroyers. Looks like some sort of sports arena, possibly sponsored by the factory workers. Grandstands. Looks like a soccer pitch. You can see some houses butt right against the stadium here, which is interesting. Even more interesting are these very old style homes right in the middle of a fairly modern city. There you can see a fairly well-modeled BT series tank, I believe a BT-5. Let's take a peek into the red team's base. Here we go. A very large industrial yard with another beautiful mosaic. Very cool. I really do enjoy looking at Soviet era art. There's just something about it that was the artists, how do I put it? I find a lot of totalitarian art designed to control you, to control your thoughts. You know, to stir emotion, to make you feel a certain way, and to control how that emotion is harnessed. And a lot of Soviet era art does that to a T. And to a degree, a lot of fascist art does it extremely well. In fact, a lot of film techniques were pioneered by the, I'm pretty sure I can't say it on YouTube, but the National Socialist Party of the German, origin. They pioneered a lot of film techniques like that low angle, aimed up toward the face to imply some level of greatness to the subject. That was pioneered by fascism. Just as a lot of utopian art was pioneered by communism. Same with brutalism. Some repeat mosaics. Wonder if I can get inside this little courtyard here. There we go. See a little clubhouse for the kids to play in. Now this concept would be expanded upon greatly in future Soviet planned cities, where the apartments would ring a civic center, which would include a elementary school, a daycare, and other public functions such as a public house, even swimming pool, athletic functions. Don't know what that means, but it looks cool. Let's take a look at this here. You can see a mosaic that really is exemplifying the textile and grain industries of the Soviet Union. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to glorify the Soviet Union, I'm just saying they had cool art, a very moving art. A lot of people like art because it makes them think or view things in a different light. And Soviet art does that as well, but not in the way the artists intended in a lot of cases. For me, I like looking at this art because it conveys emotion so intensely in a lot of cases. I wonder if that pylon's gonna, yep, just disappear. We can see the remnants of war laid out, anti-tank guns and sandbags just kind of strewn about. A little bit sad to think that so many people just had to uproot their lives so we could have a virtual tank game take place in their lawns. These homes could very well be early Stalinkas or communal homes that Stalin built and threw up, as the Soviet Union was indeed in a very large housing crisis during the beginning of his rule. And so communal homes were created. Stalin himself felt that communal living exemplified communist ideals and beliefs. That thing just folded like a deck of cards, man. To me, I find it pretty insane that wargaming has done so much graphical work, and yet I still prefer the old graphics of World of Tanks. They provided the game with a very odd quality to them. Like, it's hard to describe, really. They were so simple and polygonal. It just felt like almost like a PS2 game or something like that, which kind of tracks, since World of Tanks was originally developed from the bones of a top-down RTS game. So graphical fidelity was not exactly a very high priority, as a lot of the models would be viewed from quite some distance away. As you can see here, Ensk also employs a trolley system for the citizens to get around with. Let's kind of break on through to the other side here. There we go. We're gonna make our way over to the warehouse district of Ensk, and probably ended out over there. As the villages, we've been over the villages already. It's nothing too special. Here we can see a small industrial concern that, as I mentioned before, would have to be backed directly onto the tracks to load and unload goods. I'm not gonna lie, I do think World of Tanks is a fairly beautiful game. Even when the graphics were very bad, they had a very special quality to them. The graphics had a very special quality to them. And if anybody's curious as to exactly what I'm talking about, the Mighty Jingles has a very old replay contest that I occasionally revisit, and is a great look into the past of World of Tanks, and how it looked and how it played and how people behaved. The game's changed a lot in this decade or 14 years or however long it's been out and been played by people. It's been changing the whole time. And at some point, you realize how much has been lost to time. And you wonder if it was for the best or not. One thing I learned recently is that these little homes are actually all destructible. They're not homes, I don't know what the hell they are, but they're destructible. Well, I think that's quite enough for one day. I'm gonna go over to our little buddy, and we can end the video with him. I hope you all enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.